The first thing that didn't make sense was how calm she sounded. My sister called me at 11:43 p.m. and her voice was steady, almost rehearsed, like she'd practiced saying my name out loud before dialing. "Hey," she said softly, "I need a favor." Those 4 words should have set off alarms. Instead, I rolled onto my side, phone pressed to my ear, staring at the dark ceiling of my apartment and waiting for the catch. "What kind of favor?" I asked. There was a pause. Just long enough to feel intentional. "I need you to say I was with you tonight." I sat up. "What?" "It's nothing bad," she rushed in. I need someone to confirm it if anyone asks." "Anyone." Not him. Not the police. Not HR. Just anyone. I should have said no right there. But family has a way of blurring lines you swear you'd never cross. "Why?" I asked. She exhaled, shaky now. "I'll explain later. I promise. I just need you to trust me. Please." My sister had always been the responsible one. Married young. Stable job. The kind of person relatives used as a comparison during holidays. If she sounded scared, I believed there was a reason. "Who would ask?" I said. "Probably no one," she replied quickly. Too quickly. "This is just insurance." "Insurance against what?" I rubbed my face, already feeling the weight of it settle somewhere behind my eyes. "So what exactly am I saying?" "That you and I had dinner, watched a movie, that I crashed on your couch because it was late." "You weren't here," I said. "I know. That's lying." "Yes," she said. "That's why I need you." Another pause. Longer this time. "If you're in trouble," I started. "I'm not," she said sharply. Then softer, "I'm just trying to keep things from getting worse." Those words did it. From getting worse. I told myself it was temporary. One night. One lie. I wasn't forging documents or stealing money. I was just confirming a version of events. "Okay," I said finally. "If someone asks." Her relief was immediate. Audible. Almost overwhelming. "Thank you," she whispered. "I owe you. I swear." We hung up, and I sat there in the dark, stomach tight, already regretting it. The next morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls and an email from my manager. Subject line, quick check-in. I stared at it longer than necessary before opening it. "Can you come by my office this morning?" "Nothing urgent, just need to clarify something." Clarify. That word again. At work, people avoided eye contact. Not obviously, just subtly enough to feel wrong. The receptionist smiled a beat too late. A coworker stopped mid-sentence when I walked by. By the time I reached my manager's office, my palms were damp. He gestured for me to sit, folding his hands on the desk like we were about to discuss quarterly numbers. "Did your sister stay with you last night?" he asked casually. My mouth went dry. "Yes," I said. The lie slid out smoother than I expected. "Why?" He nodded slowly. "That's what she said." Something in his tone made my chest tighten. "Is there a problem?" I asked. He leaned back. "Not necessarily. We're just verifying timelines." "Timelines for what?" He hesitated. "Just a fraction. An internal review." I left his office with a polite smile and a sinking feeling I couldn't shake. I called my sister immediately. "What's going on?" I demanded the second she answered. "Why is my job suddenly involved?" She sounded tired now. Not scared. Not rushed. Just drained. "I told you I'd explain," she said. "Just not over the phone." "When?" "Tonight." I wanted to push. I wanted answers now. But something in her voice warned me off. "Okay," I said. "Tonight." All day, fragments of conversation drifted past me. Security footage. Statement didn't match. Legal's involved now. No one said my name. That somehow made it worse. By the time I got home, my phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "This is HR. Please confirm your availability tomorrow morning." I didn't reply. I sat on my couch, staring at the exact spot my sister claimed she'd slept on. The lie was already bigger than I'd planned for. She arrived just after 9. No makeup. Hair pulled back. She looked older somehow. We sat across from each other in silence. "I need the full story," I said. She nodded. "Okay." Then she said the one thing I wasn't prepared for. "They think I was involved," she said quietly. "And now, so are you." My heart dropped. "Involved in what?" I asked. She swallowed. "That's the problem. They haven't told me yet." And in that moment, I realized the truth wasn't just hidden from me. It was being built, piece by piece, with my name already inside it. By the time my sister said, "They think I was involved," the room felt smaller, like the air itself had gotten nervous. "Involved in what?" I repeated, slower this time, like maybe the words would land differently if I gave them more space. She stared at her hands. Her nails were bitten down to the quick, which wasn't normal for her. She'd always been the kind of person who had a spare nail file in her purse and lint-rolled her coat before leaving the house. I don't know exactly, she admitted. I just know what they think happened. My stomach twisted. So, you asked me to lie for you and you don't even know what the accusation is? She flinched at that. I didn't say I didn't know anything. I leaned forward. Okay, then tell me what you do know. She looked up at me like she was about to say something that would change the shape of our relationship permanently. There was an incident at the firm, she said quietly. I blinked. At my firm? She nodded. My sister didn't work at my company. She didn't even work in my industry. She had nothing to do with our office building, our systems, our people. So hearing her say the firm like it was a shared place sent a jolt through me. What kind of incident? I asked. She swallowed. Someone accessed a restricted client folder after hours. A contract template got altered. And a signature page was generated. My skin went cold. A signature page for what? That's what they won't tell me yet, she said quickly. But I heard my name. I heard your name. I heard someone say family connection like it was a clue. I stood up without meaning to. Why would your name even be in the same sentence as this? She took a breath, then reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. Because I was there, she said. The words hit like a slap. You were at my office? I whispered. I was outside, she corrected. In the parking garage. What were you doing there? She hesitated. I waited. My heartbeat started thumping in my ears hard enough that it felt like pressure. Finally, she said, I met someone. I stared at her. Who? A man, she said, like that narrowed it down. Someone I shouldn't have trusted. My throat tightened. Is this about your marriage? Her eyes flickered to the side. That was answer enough. I felt a strange sick mix of emotions, anger, fear, pity, confusion. Because suddenly I could see it, the late-night call, the rehearsed calm, the insurance. She hadn't been protecting herself from some vague misunderstanding. She'd been trying to build a timeline, an alibi, and she chose me as the foundation. Start over, I said, voice low. From the moment you decided to call me last night. Her jaw trembled. She pressed her lips together, then nodded. Okay, she said. But you can't cut me off. I won't, I promised, though my hands were already clenched so tight my fingernails hurt. She took a long breath, like she was stepping into cold water. 3 weeks ago, she began, my husband told me he was switching shifts. He said it was temporary. Extra hours. Good money. I stayed quiet. I believed him, she continued. Then I started noticing weird stuff. His phone face down. His car smelling like someone else's cologne. He'd come home too wired to sleep, like he was coming from something exciting. Her voice cracked on that last word. I confronted him, she said. Not screaming. Just asking. And he did what he always does. He made me feel crazy for even asking. My chest tightened because I knew that script. Different people, same lines. So I did something stupid, she said. I went through his laptop. That didn't sound stupid. That sounded like survival. And I found messages, she said. Not romantic ones. Not I miss you or whatever. It was logistics. Like planning. Planning what? I found a thread with a number that wasn't saved, she said. And I know this sounds dramatic, but it didn't feel like cheating. It felt like a deal. My mouth went dry. What kind of deal? I asked. She shook her head quickly. I don't know. It was coded. But there was one line that stuck out. It said, your sister's badge makes this easy. My lungs stopped working for a second. My badge? I said. She nodded slowly, eyes wet now. I didn't even know you had a badge. I didn't know your building used them. But the second I read that, I felt sick. My job was secure. Good pay, decent benefits, a place I'd built myself into. I wasn't some executive. I wasn't important. I was mid-level operations, paperwork, compliance support, vendor coordination. I handled access requests sometimes, sure, but I wasn't the one approving million-dollar contracts. So why would someone mention my badge like it was a key? I sat back down, slowly, like if I moved too fast the room would break. You think your husband used my badge? I asked. I don't know, she said quickly. I don't think he ever physically had it. But, she hesitated. But someone else might. My heart started pounding harder. Who did you meet in the garage? I asked. Her lips parted, then she whispered, a man who said he could help me. Help you how? That was the question, but I already hated where my brain was going. He messaged me first, she said, almost defensively. From a number I didn't know. He said he'd seen my husband out with someone. He said he had proof. You believed him? I asked. I didn't, she said quickly. Not at first. But then he sent a photo. Her fingers moved on the screen and she held her phone out to me. I didn't want to look. I looked anyway. The photo was taken from a distance, grainy, like a stalker shot. My brother-in-law was outside a restaurant, leaning in close to someone in a coat. You couldn't see the face clearly, but the body language was unmistakable, intimate, private, the kind of closeness you don't share with a stranger. Under the photo was a message: he's doing more than cheating. If you want the truth, meet me tonight. 11:30, lower garage. I stared at the phone. This is blackmail. I know, she whispered, but I was spiraling. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I kept thinking, if it's more than cheating, if it's something that could hurt me. So you went, I said. She nodded once. And he met you, I said. Yes. And what did he want? I asked. Her face went pale. He wanted me to confirm something. Confirm what? He asked if you worked in that building. He already knew the company name. He asked if you had access to restricted areas. My throat tightened. And you told him? I told him you worked there, she said quickly. I didn't tell him anything else. I swear. I didn't know whether to believe her. Not because she was a liar by nature, she wasn't, but because fear makes people confess things without realizing what they're handing over. What did he look like? I asked. She blinked, thinking. Mid-30s. Nice coat. Clean shoes. Not scary. But he had that vibe, you know? Like he was always watching how people reacted. She rubbed her forearm like she could scrub the memory off. He said he worked with risk, she said. He said there was an internal investigation happening and that I was going to get blamed for something I didn't do. He said the only way to protect myself was to get ahead of it. And how? I asked carefully. Did he suggest you get ahead of it? She looked at me, and I watched my sister, my calm, organized, reliable sister, turn into someone small and cornered. He told me to establish where I was last night, she whispered. Before anyone asked. My stomach dropped. So he instructed you to call me, I said. She nodded. And you did. Yes. I stood up again, pacing now, unable to sit with the adrenaline. Do you understand what you just said? You were manipulated into pulling me into an investigation I didn't even know existed. Tears started to spill down her cheeks. I didn't know what else to do. I turned toward the window, staring at the streetlights outside my apartment like they could give me answers. Did you go inside the building? I asked. No, she said quickly. I swear on my life, no. Did you touch anything? Talk to security? Talk to anyone besides him? I asked. No. Then I paused, because one ugly thought had been crawling under my skin since she mentioned my badge. Did he ever get close enough to you? I asked slowly. To take something? She blinked. What? Your purse, I said. Your phone. Your keys. Anything. She frowned, thinking hard. He hugged me, she admitted, like she was ashamed. He said he was sorry. He said he knew how it felt to be made to look crazy. My blood ran cold. The hug wasn't comfort. It was proximity. And if this man knew my name, knew my workplace, knew the concept of my badge being useful, then there was one terrifying possibility that made everything click. That my sister's favor wasn't just to cover for her. It was to cover for someone else using my identity while she served as a convenient thread tying it together. I turned back to her. Listen, I said, voice tight. Tomorrow, you are not speaking to anyone without a lawyer. Her eyes widened. A lawyer? I can't afford. I don't care, I snapped, then softened. I'll figure it out. But you're not walking into HR or police or anyone and trying to explain this alone. She wiped her face, nodding. Then my phone buzzed. A new email notification. From corporate security. Subject line, access review, badge activity. My stomach dropped into my feet. I opened it with shaking hands. We noticed unusual access behavior linked to your credentials. Please report to Security Office A at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Do not bring any personal devices. I read it twice. 3 times. Unusual access behavior. Linked to your credentials. I looked up at my sister, and she looked at me like she already knew. What did he do? I whispered. She shook her head, terrified. I don't know. But the truth was starting to take shape, sharp around the edges. Someone used my badge, or made it look like they did. Someone wanted a clean timeline. And my sister's voice at 11:43 p.m. hadn't been calm because she was in control. It was calm because someone had told her exactly what to say. I stared at the email again. Do not bring any personal devices. That wasn't a request. That was a warning. And suddenly, the favor felt less like family loyalty, and more like the first step in a trap that had already been set. Security Office A was in the basement. That should have been my first clue. Most people don't realize how intentionally buildings are designed. Offices want light, glass, openness. Basements are for things you don't want seen, servers, archives, and conversations that aren't meant to echo. I left my phone in my car like the email instructed. No smartwatch. No earbuds. Nothing that could buzz or blink or record. By the time I reached the security checkpoint, I already felt stripped down. The guard scanned my badge. It beeped. Once. Then again. He frowned at the screen, then at me. "They're expecting you," he said, like that was supposed to be comforting. He buzzed me through. Security office. It wasn't an office. It was a windowless conference room with a metal table, 3 chairs, and a single camera bolted into the corner like an afterthought. 2 people were already inside, a woman from corporate security I'd seen once during onboarding, and a man I didn't recognize at all. The woman smiled politely. The man didn't. "Have a seat," she said. I sat. The door closed behind me with a soft click that sounded much louder than it should have. "Do you know why you're here?" she asked. "Yes," I said carefully. "Because of unusual badge activity." She nodded. "Correct." The man finally spoke. "Specifically, your badge was used last night at 11:51 p.m. to access the Northside Executive Corridor." My heart skipped. "That's impossible." He raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because I was at home," I said. "And my badge was with me." He slid a printed photo across the table. It was a still frame from a security camera. The image was grainy, time-stamped, black and white. Someone stood near the executive corridor door, arm extended toward the scanner. The badge was visible. My badge. Same scuff on the corner. Same faded logo. Same lanyard clip I'd bent accidentally months ago. But the hand holding it wasn't mine. It was larger, broader, male. "That's not me," I said immediately. "We know," the woman said. I froze. "You do?" "Yes," she said calmly. "Which is why we're talking to you as a witness, not a suspect. For now." The man leaned forward. "Your badge was cloned." The word hit harder than I expected. "Cloned?" I repeated. "Yes," he said. "Someone copied its data and produced a functional duplicate." I exhaled shakily. "How is that even possible?" "Close proximity," he replied. "Crowded spaces. Physical contact. All it takes is a few seconds." My sister's hug flashed in my mind. The parking garage. The stranger. The comfort that wasn't comfort. My stomach turned. "Who accessed the corridor?" I asked. The woman exchanged a glance with the man. "That's where it gets complicated." She tapped a tablet and turned it toward me. On the screen was a document. A contract. Or at least, something that looked like one. Client name redacted. Amount redacted. But the signature block at the bottom was visible. And under authorized representative, there was a digital signature. My name. My breath left my body all at once. "That's not my signature," I said hoarsely. "We know," she said again. "But it was generated using your credentials." The man folded his arms. "Which means someone wanted it to look like you approved it." "Approved what?" I demanded. The woman hesitated, then said, "A contingency clause tied to a potential acquisition." I stared at her. "I don't have authority to approve anything like that." "Exactly," the man said. "Which is why this document couldn't legally stand. But its existence could cause significant damage." "Damage to who?" I asked. "To the company," he replied. "And to you." The room felt like it was tilting. "So let me get this straight," I said slowly. "Someone cloned my badge, used it to access a restricted area, generated a fake contract with my name on it, and somehow timed it so my sister was conveniently with me that night?" The woman nodded. "And you think my sister was involved?" I asked. She hesitated. "We think she was used." Relief and terror collided in my chest. "Who did this?" I asked. The man smiled faintly. Not kindly. "That's the question." The woman stood. "We're going to show you something." She opened the door and gestured for me to follow. We walked down a narrow hallway into another room, this one darker, lit only by monitors. On one screen was the same executive corridor footage. On another, a man's face frozen mid-step as he passed under a camera. I stopped walking. Because I recognized him. Not from work. From my sister's description. Mid-30s. Clean shoes. Nice coat. Observant eyes. "That's him," I whispered. "That's the man she met." The man beside me nodded. "We thought so." "Who is he?" I asked. "He's not an employee," the woman said. "He's a consultant." "For who?" She looked at me, expression unreadable. "For us." The words didn't land at first. "For corporate security?" I said. "No," the man corrected. "For internal stress testing." I turned to him slowly. "You mean, we hire external operatives to probe vulnerabilities," he said. "Social engineering, access control, human error. It's how we prevent real breaches." My pulse roared in my ears. So this was a test? Yes, he said. And no. The woman stepped in. He was authorized to attempt access. He was not authorized to involve civilians. I felt dizzy. My sister is a civilian. Yes, she said quietly. And so are you. The man's jaw tightened. He crossed a line. And now? I asked. Now, the woman said, we're cleaning up a mess he created. My hands were shaking. So the contract was fake, she said. Designed to see how quickly internal systems would flag it. And my name? I said. My badge? The man sighed. He chose you because you were mid-level, trusted, not watched too closely, and because, he glanced at the screen, you were connected to someone emotionally exploitable. The room went silent. My sister hadn't been targeted because of her husband. She'd been targeted because of me. And the hug in the parking garage hadn't just been proximity. It had been a test. How much of this was planned? I asked. The woman met my eyes. Enough that it worked. Anger flared hot and sudden. You let this happen. We stopped it before it finalized, she said. No money moved. No clients affected. But you let my sister think she was being framed, I snapped. You let me walk in here thinking my career was over. The man didn't look away. Because we needed to see how you'd respond. I laughed once. Sharp. Humorless. So this was never about whether I was guilty. No, he said. It was about whether you were useful. The word settled heavy in my chest. What happens now? I asked. The woman turned off the screen. Now we offer you a choice. I frowned. A choice? She nodded. We can close this quietly. Flag the consultant, revise protocols, wipe your name from the document trail. And the other option? I asked. The man stepped closer. You come work with us. My stomach dropped. You already proved something, he said. You noticed inconsistencies. You protected your sister. You didn't panic. People like you are rare. I didn't volunteer for any of this, I said. No, the woman agreed. But you're already in it. I thought of my sister, crying on my couch, believing she'd ruined my life. Does she ever find out the truth? I asked. The woman shook her head. Not if you want her safe. The implication chilled me. I realized then what the real twist was. This wasn't a test that went wrong. It was a recruitment that went too right. And the favor my sister asked for? It didn't just cover a night. It opened a door that couldn't be closed again. I didn't answer them right away. Not because I was tempted, but because I needed to understand the shape of the cage before deciding whether to step inside it. Let me get this straight, I said slowly, keeping my voice even. You ran a stress test. One of your consultants crossed a line. My sister got emotionally manipulated. My credentials got cloned. My name was attached to a fake document. And now you're offering me a job so this all goes away? The man didn't flinch. That's one way to frame it. The woman folded her hands. Another way is that we're giving you control over how this ends. I stared at the dark monitor, my reflection faint in the glass. And if I say no? I asked. She didn't answer immediately. That was the answer. If you say no, she said carefully, this incident still exists. Your name still appears in internal logs. Not as a criminal, but as an anomaly. And anomalies tend to resurface. So my career just stays poisoned? I asked. No, the man said. It stays conditional. I let out a breath through my nose. You're good at this. He gave a thin smile. We have to be. I stood up. I need time. The woman nodded. Of course. We expected that. How much time? I asked. 24 hours, the man said. After that, we proceed without you. I didn't ask what that meant. My sister was asleep on my couch when I got home. Curled up, shoes still on, phone clutched in her hand like she'd passed out mid-scroll. I stood there for a long moment, just watching her breathe. She looked smaller like this. Less like the person who'd dragged me into this and more like the person I'd grown up with, the one who used to let me sleep in her bed when thunderstorms scared me. I covered her with a blanket. Then I went into my bedroom and shut the door quietly. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally let myself feel it. The anger came first. Hot, shaky, unfocused. At the consultant. At the company. At myself for saying yes to the lie so easily. At my sister for making the call in the first place. Then came the fear. Not the sharp kind, the slow kind that settles in your chest and makes everything feel fragile. Because once you understand how easily systems bend, you stop trusting that any of it is solid. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I stared at it, heart pounding. Then it buzzed again. You handled today well. I didn't respond. Another message followed almost immediately. I was worried you'd panic. My fingers went cold. You shouldn't have involved my sister. I typed back before I could stop myself. The typing bubble appeared, disappeared. appeared again. She wasn't supposed to matter, the reply came. You were. I locked the phone and tossed it onto the bed like it was something alive. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just corporate damage control. Someone was still watching. The next morning, my sister woke up disoriented but calmer. She made coffee like she used to, apologizing too much, moving carefully around me like she was afraid of stepping on something broken. Did they say anything? She asked quietly. Yes, I said. Her shoulders tensed. Am I in trouble? I looked at her for a long second. No, I said. You're not. She exhaled in relief so strong it almost hurt to watch. Thank you, she whispered, for covering for me. For everything. I nodded. You're going to stay with me for a while. She hesitated. Is that okay? It's necessary, I said. She didn't ask why. At work, nothing looked different. That was the worst part. Same desks, same emails, same coworkers complaining about coffee being too weak or meetings being too long. If you didn't know what to look for, you'd think the world was stable. But I knew better now. Every badge swipe felt like a question. Every security camera felt heavier. Every login prompt felt like a reminder that identity was just data wearing a familiar face. At noon, my manager stopped by my desk. Everything okay? He asked casually. Yes, I said. He smiled. Good. Security wrapped up their review. I forced myself to smile back. Glad to hear it. He walked away. I didn't relax. That night, I sat alone in my car outside my apartment, engine off, phone in my lap. 24 hours were almost up. I thought about what they'd said. About being useful. About control. About how quickly they'd identified my sister as leverage without even calling it that. And I thought about the consultant. The way he'd smiled on the screen. The way he'd hugged my sister. The way he'd messaged me like we were already on the same side. I unlocked my phone. If I say yes, I typed, what happens to him? The reply came almost instantly. He becomes a cautionary tale. That's not an answer, I typed. A pause. He disappears from our vendor list. His access is revoked. His reputation quietly collapses. I swallowed. And if I say no? Longer pause this time. Then he remains a variable. That was the moment everything snapped into focus. This wasn't about justice. It was about containment. They didn't want me because I was special. They wanted me because I'd already been compromised, and I was still standing. I thought of my sister sleeping safely inside. Of my job. Of the version of my life where this all faded into a bad memory. Then I thought of how easily it could happen again. To someone else. Someone without a warning. Someone without leverage. I typed one last message. I'll do it. But on my terms. This time, the pause felt intentional. Then, we were hoping you'd say that. What are your terms? I stared out at the dark street, feeling something settle into place inside me. Not peace, but clarity. You don't use my family again, I typed. Ever. 3 dots appeared, then vanished. Then the reply came. Agreed. I knew better than to believe that fully. But I also knew this. I hadn't stepped into their world to disappear. I'd stepped in to watch it from the inside. And that was something they hadn't tested for yet. They didn't onboard me like a normal employee. There was no welcome email. No HR packet. No smiling orientation video telling me how much the company valued culture. Instead, I got a single message with an address, a time, and a warning. Do not arrive early. Do not bring your phone. The building wasn't labeled. No sign. No logo. Just glass, steel, and a security desk that didn't bother asking my name. They already had it. The woman from corporate security met me in the lobby. Same calm smile. Same unreadable eyes. Follow me, she said. We took an elevator down. Past the basement. Past levels that didn't exist on any public directory. The doors opened into a space that felt less like an office and more like a control room for something unnamed. Monitors everywhere. Live feeds. Data streams. Names scrolling past too fast to read. This is internal risk mitigation, she said, like she was giving a tour of a museum. We simulate threats before they become real. And people like me? I asked. She glanced at me. People like you observe where systems fail quietly. That didn't make me feel better. They started me small. Timeline reconstruction. Behavioral analysis. Reviewing tests that had gone sideways. Each file was a story that looked harmless on the surface and horrifying once you followed the thread. A temp who clicked the wrong link and unknowingly exposed a client database. An assistant who let someone borrow her login because they sounded confident. A junior manager who covered for a friend, just once, and ended up attached to a financial crime he didn't commit. Patterns. Always patterns. I was good at it. That scared me. Within a week, I noticed something else too. Every case felt uncomfortably personal. Family members, romantic partners, emotional leverage points. They weren't testing systems. They were testing people. My sister started to relax. She got a job interview. She laughed more. She stopped apologizing every time she spoke to me. From her perspective, the nightmare had passed. I let her believe that. But every night, I locked my bedroom door. 2 weeks in, I was called into a smaller room. Just me, the man. No woman this time. You're progressing quickly, he said. I'm motivated, I replied. He studied me. That's not what I meant. He slid a tablet across the table. On it was a familiar face. My sister. The image was recent. Taken from across a street. She was mid-step, smiling at her phone, unaware. My stomach dropped. What is this? A demonstration, he said calmly. Of what? I demanded. Of trust, he replied. I stood up so fast my chair scraped loudly against the floor. You promised you wouldn't use my family. We're not using her, he said evenly. We're observing. That's the same thing, I snapped. No, he corrected. Using creates pressure. Observing creates data. I stared at him, shaking. Why are you showing me this? To see how you'd react. The room went very quiet. And? I asked. He tilted his head. You reacted emotionally. Predictable. But you didn't act impulsively. My voice dropped. You planned this. Yes, he said. Just like you plan everything now. That's when it hit me. The twist wasn't that they were still watching my sister. The twist was that I was still being tested. I sat back down slowly. You said I was useful, I said. Not disposable. He smiled faintly. Everyone is disposable. Some people just take longer. I forced my breathing to steady. If this is leverage, it won't work. It's not leverage, he said again. It's calibration. For what? For the next phase. He tapped the tablet. The image changed. A new file. A name I recognized. The consultant. The man who hugged my sister. The man who cloned my badge. He didn't disappear, I said quietly. No, he replied. He failed upward. The file showed timestamps. Communications. Internal approvals. He crossed a line, I said. You said so. Yes, the man agreed. Which made him perfect. For what? I asked. For bait. My mouth went dry. We're tracking a larger breach, he continued. Someone who knows our systems. Someone who understands how we recruit, how we test, how we clean up. And you think it's him? I asked. We know it's not, he said. But he thinks it might be us. I looked up sharply. You're letting him think he's rogue. Yes. And where do I fit into this? I asked. He smiled. You're the variable he doesn't expect. The room felt colder. You want me to what? I said carefully. Get close to him? Not close, he corrected. Convincing. I shook my head. You're asking me to become what he was. No, he said. We're asking you to become better. I laughed bitterly. You already turned me into part of the machine. Not yet, he said. You still think you're different. That was the most honest thing he'd said so far. That night, I didn't go home. I drove until the city thinned and parked under a flickering streetlight, hands locked on the steering wheel. I thought about my sister. About how easily her life had been brushed into a file labeled collateral. I thought about the consultant. How confident he'd been. How convinced he was that he was in control. And I realized something that made my stomach churn. The only reason I was still safe was because I was still useful. I pulled out my phone and typed a message I wasn't supposed to send. To a number I'd memorized but never saved. You were right, I wrote. They don't stop watching. The typing bubble appeared, paused. Then, I wondered how long it would take you to notice. My blood ran cold. You're not as protected as you think, the message continued. If you want your sister untouched, we need to talk. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Because now I understood the real danger. It wasn't that I'd been recruited. It was that someone else had noticed. And decided I was the weak point. I didn't meet him right away. That was the first choice I made that was actually mine. Instead, I sat in my car with the engine off, phone glowing in the dark, rereading his message until the words lost meaning. If you want your sister untouched, we need to talk. It was the oldest trick there is. Make it sound like you still have options when the board is already set. I typed back slowly. You already crossed that line. The reply came almost instantly. No. I showed you where the line really is. I closed my eyes. He wasn't wrong. The next morning, I went to work like nothing was happening. That was the second choice. I sat at my desk, answered emails, nodded in meetings. I smiled at the woman from security when she passed my station like we were colleagues and not participants in a quiet war. At 10:17 a.m., I was summoned downstairs. Same room. Same table. But this time I didn't wait for them to speak. He contacted me, I said. The man didn't look surprised. The woman did, just barely. When? The man asked. Last night, I replied. He thinks I'm unprotected. He thinks my sister is leverage. The woman inhaled sharply. Did you respond? Yes. The man leaned back. Good. I stared at him. Good? He trusts you enough to reach out, he said. That saves us time. No, I said quietly. That puts her in danger. The woman stepped in. Is he asking for a meeting? Yes. When? She asked. Tonight. The room went still. The man studied me. Location? He wants me to choose, I said. He thinks that gives me control. The man smiled faintly. Does it? I met his eyes. Only if you let me do this my way. Silence. Then, finally, he nodded. Talk. I meet him alone, I said. No tail. No backup he can spot. You stay invisible. The woman shook her head. That's not protocol. This entire situation isn't protocol, I shot back. He knows how you operate. If he smells you, he disappears, and he won't disappear quietly. The man considered this. And after? He asked. After, I said, you end it. Completely. No variables. No monitoring my family. No quiet files that never close. And if we don't agree? He asked. I held his gaze. Then I walk. And I tell him everything. That did it. The man's smile faded. Where's the meeting? He asked. I named the place. The cafe was nearly empty. Late enough to be quiet. Early enough to look innocent. He was already there when I arrived, seated near the window, coffee untouched. Same nice coat. Same calm posture. Same eyes that never stopped measuring. You came, he said. I told you I would, I replied, sitting across from him. He smiled. They didn't stop you? They don't know where I am, I lied. He studied my face, searching for cracks. You adapted quickly, he said. Most people don't. I didn't have a choice, I replied. No, he agreed. That's what made you interesting. I didn't respond. He leaned forward. You should know. I didn't expect them to recruit you. Yet here we are, I said. Yes, he smiled. And now you're standing in the space between. Is that why you messaged me? I asked. To pull me out? He shook his head. To warn you. About what? He lowered his voice. You think they're in control. They're not. They're reacting. My pulse spiked. To what? To something much bigger than you, he said. Or me. I studied him carefully. You're lying. He smiled again. You're learning. I leaned in. You crossed a line involving my sister. His expression didn't change. I crossed a line to see if you'd notice. And now? I asked. Now I know exactly who you are, he said. And so do they. The words landed heavier than he intended. Because that was the truth. This wasn't about him anymore. It was about me. You think you're different from me, he continued. But you already made the same choice I did. I shook my head. No, I didn't. You lied, he said. You protected your own. You stepped into their system instead of burning it down. That's not resistance. It's survival, I said. He laughed softly. That's what I told myself too. I stood. We're done, I said. He frowned. You think you can just walk away? Yes, I said. Because this time I'm not the one being tested. I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, he said quietly, they won't let you keep her safe forever. I stopped, but didn't turn around. They don't have to, I said. Because this ends tonight. By morning, it was over. Officially, the consultant resigned. Unofficially, he vanished. His accounts frozen. His contacts burned. His narrative rewritten. The company issued a quiet internal memo about revised testing ethics. My badge was replaced. My file was sealed. And my sister? She never knew how close she came to becoming collateral. She moved on. Started fresh. Built something that wasn't touched by glass buildings or quiet rooms underground. I stayed. Not because I trusted them, but because someone had to remember the cost. Because the most dangerous systems aren't the ones that break loudly, they're the ones that work perfectly while convincing everyone they're safe. And because I learned something I can never unlearn. The strongest leverage isn't fear. It's usefulness. Once you're useful, you don't need to be threatened. You just need to be reminded. That's the price I pay now. And the reason I never answer late night calls asking for just one favor again.